He begins to tell me that the Lord has spoken to him and that Diane, his wife, is going to die and that we're going to get married, she said.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Wake Up and Win. And I've got my iced coffee here. Christina has got
I have
her
3 drinks.
tea, her coffee, and her water.
I have a sore throat.
She has a sore throat. If you notice, we're in a different location here today because, frankly, we're not a breaking news organization at all. We're a podcast. But this story is moving so fast, and we want to keep things moving with you guys and be able to comment on what's going on. Our guy, our good friend Armando, he was like, look, let me help you guys set something up upstairs so that days I can't come in, you guys can just go up there and do it. So here we are.
Here we are.
So today is it's huge. I mean, last night, today's December 1st, but last night on November 30th, the Roy's report dropped the exclusive. Woman says IHOPKC founder Mike Bickle used prophecy to sexually abuse her. So when we saw this drop, we dove through it immediately. We'll read it, but what were your initial thoughts and feelings, Christina?
Well, it's so crazy because it's everything that we've been talking about. We knew was coming. Everybody's kind of hinted that this is what's going on, but it's still everything you read. Every time something new happens, it's still just so shocking.
It's shocking every time.
Every time you can't prepare yourself. I feel like.
Yeah, because we'd gotten we'd gotten little hints of possibly what's going on, and that's why at times people will say to us, they're like, why don't you just out with the evidence? What is it? What is it? And we haven't held this evidence. We haven't had this evidence, but we've gotten insights into what's possibly there, things like this, etc.
Because of things that have happened in the past in other organizations.
Exactly. And so things have been alluded to, and we're going, okay, there is definitely a story out there that will come out in the timing of Jane Doe. Right. It's not something for us to say or for the Roy's report to say or for Heaven Bent to say or for anybody to say, frankly, and nobody has. Thankfully, everybody's been handling this well. It was the story for Jane Doe to tell. And because it happened to her. And so she's telling her story. And so number one thing I want to say, we are very proud of this woman for coming out.
She's very brave.
I'm actually very sad right now as soon as we start this. I'm kind of but we are very proud that she had the just the courage to do this. And Christina, I just want to speak to the people that don't. There's a lot of people that will be like, yes, we're very proud of her. This is incredible. But I want to speak to the people that might say, okay, but this is a Jane Doe. Why doesn't she come out? Why doesn't she say it? Why doesn't she say her name? Well, we're going to read the article for you, and we're going to link it. And when you read this, you're going to understand why she's a Jane Doe at this point. And would you want your daughter to come out with her name in this scenario? Would you want your wife to come out with her name in this scenario? If it were you, would you want to come out with your name? Frankly, here's the thing about this article too. The emails are linked. Mike Bickle's emails are linked to her husband when he came to confront Mike. And it is mind-blowing what I read. And I'm going, that is definitely not the Mike Bickle that I knew, which I didn't know Mike personally. Most people didn't. But it is very, very mind-blowing.
I would definitely encourage you. We'll put the link in the description whenever you're reading it to click on the red words that you can click on, and opens up a new window with the actual emails and stuff, because that is...
The first time I read through it, I didn't read all those, and my buddy reached out. He said, did you read the emails? Mm-hmm. And I went, oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's...
So I'm going to let you start.
Okay, we'll read through it, and then we'll just pick out some points.
I'm going to back that up. There we go.
Good?
Yep.
In 1996, at age 19, Jane Doe decided to move to Kansas City to intern with her father's friend, Mike Bickle. The 42-year-old prophetic pastor's preaching about King David had touched her heart. I just remember feeling like he knew the same Jesus that I knew, Doe told the Roy's report in an exclusive interview. Soon after she arrived, she said Bickle told her he had a dream about her. After Sunday service, in front of Bickle's wife, Diane, Doe said Bickle prophesied that he was David and Doe was Esther. He gives me the biggest word of my life, she told TRR. It was, "You're not just an Esther, you're going to lead thousands of Esthers." A few weeks later, Bickle called Doe from Asia to say the Lord spoke to him about her. She said, this time though, she said he sounded drunk. He begins to tell me that the Lord has spoken to him and that Diane, his wife, is going to die and that we're going to get married, she said. As he's talking to me, I'm thinking, is he drunk? And he did start talking about the alcohol that was in the fridge that he had been drinking. From 1996 to 1999, Doe said Bickle put her up in an apartment by herself, gave her a key to his office, engaged in sexual interactions with her, and told her about the dream again and again. He also began establishing the International House of Prayer in Kansas City. So this is while he was starting IHOPKC.
It was when he was starting it. So for background, Bickle was a pastor at Kansas City Fellowship, I think, or MCF, Metro City Fellowship, and he was there with leadership. Was Michael Sullivan was there, which he's in this article, and some others. And Mike leaves Metro City Fellowship or Kansas City, whatever it was, and starts IHOP based on Bob Jones showing up to Kansas City Fellowship and prophesying to Mike multiple times, and then or something like that.
I think it actually gets
into it. Yeah.
But that line that Diane, his wife, is going to die and that we're going to get married, he said he had at least said that to me 100 times, Doe said.
Jeez.
TRR is referring to Doe rather than the woman's real name because TRR has a policy of not naming victims of alleged clergy sexual abuse unless they request it. But Alan Hood, former president of IHOP University, and Aaron Parks, an IHOPKC founder, confirmed Doe's identity with TRR. Okay, so everybody knows about Alan Hood, Hood's statement he put out. And then Aaron Parks is an IHOPKC founder, which seems like a big deal that she also confirmed this person's identity. So this isn't just like a made-up story, like people like to pretend. TRR reached out to Bickle repeatedly for comment, but he did not respond to our request. TRR also reached out to IHOPKC, but did not receive an on-the-record response. Doe told TRR that she provided information for a 50-page report that the former IHOPKC leaders, known as the Complaint or Advocate Group, turned over to current IHOPKC leaders last month. The Advocate Group alleged that Bickle engaged in clergy sexual abuse with multiple women over decades. 8 people, some former high-level IHOPKC leaders, also spoke exclusively to TRR and corroborated Doe's allegations and Doe's attempts to bring accountability. Do you want to read for a second?
Yeah.
Sorry, my throat.
Former IHOPKC staffers have called for a third-party investigation into the allegation against Bickle. However, the current IHOPKC leaders have said any such investigation is premature. These women, or 3 women, have publicly said they were named by IHOPKC leaders as victims of Bickle's, by the former IHOPKC leaders as victim of Bickle's, but are not. IHOPKC has released a report discrediting some of the alleged victims mentioned in the report or named in conversations with whistleblowers. Yet Doe told TRR she's not just one of Bickle's victims. She also witnessed his grooming of other women at IHOPKC. She told TRR she tried for years to confront Bickle on inappropriate behavior with other young women.
So that's an interesting point, I think, worthy to note.
Yeah.
She is saying she's not the only one. Mm-hmm. She's not the only one. So everybody who's like, oh, it was one thing that happened 26 years ago, you know.
And I'm going to say this early, very early in this, because we'll get into this, but confirmed in Mike Bickle's email, okay, to Jane Doe's husband, is the fact that Mike has been funding their ministry. And when the husband found out about this, which it says lower that she brought it to her husband in May because she had read an article about Bill Cosby and his abuse, and it triggered her, and she went, oh my gosh, this is how this happened to me, and she brought it to her husband in May. So we're talking 20 to 25 years ago. It's so sad. But my point is that what people sometimes go is they're like, oh, what is she trying to gain in this? Or is she trying to extort money or something like this? I'm telling you, like, there is not much to gain here for them. First of all, they're losing financial support from a multi-million-dollar ministry, starting immediately. And you'll see that in Mike's interesting kind of chaotic email.
Yeah.
And then secondly, all of these guys that are coming out to talk about this and stand for these victims, they're actually putting their ministries in jeopardy because they were in good standing with IHOP, who's a nationally known, internationally known, multi-million-dollar ministry.
Who's trying to like now publicly discredit them and act like they're bad guys.
Like they're all terrible people. Like suddenly they're like, yeah, these guys are just, it's like Stewart and Sliker were friends with these guys. And you'll see that Stewart is in this as well, unfortunately. Let's keep going. I would like to see, this is quote Doe. She says, I would see him do things like put his hand up. Trigger warning, by the way. Trigger warning for anybody that's going to be listening. If you've gone through sexual abuse or anything like that, I would say maybe don't listen to this episode. Just know that these bad things happened, but trigger warning, okay? I would see him do things like put his hand up one of my friend's leg under the table at the restaurant, and I would the next day go in and confront him about it. She said another woman, I saw her put her hand in his pocket to get an ibuprofen, and she had a key to his office, and she was coming in with special drinks and herbs and essential oils. Okay? Anytime I saw anything with any other woman that was inappropriate, I would confront him on it. Several people who worked closely with Doe at that time in TRR, they also noticed told TRR that they noticed strange dynamics between Bickle and other young women, as well as Doe. They include Aaron Parks and Doe's brother, whose name we're not revealing to protect Doe's identity. However, Allen had confirmed Doe's brother's identity with TRR. Parks and Doe's brother say Bickle spiritualized explanations, the power of his fame and presence, his generosity, and the fact that they were all young in their 20s masked the red flags. He was 40-something and we were 20-something, said Parks. And so I guess it felt safe to let him dote on you and let him encourage you and let him offer to buy you houses and things.
Buy you houses and things.
That's crazy. Until this year, Doe hasn't spoken publicly about what happened with Bickle, heeding his allegations and warnings.
His alleged warnings.
Oh, heeding his alleged warnings to her that if she did, no one would believe her. But beginning in March, she said she realized the gravity of her situation and began talking, first to family, then through the 50-page report to a watching world. Doe's brother told TRR that after hearing his sister's revelation, past encounters with Bickle that seemed odd suddenly made sense. Doe's brother said that one time Bickle pointed out verses about King David sleeping with Bathsheba. Quote, he highlighted them in orange, laughed, and gave my Bible back to me, Doe's brother said. I just so believed Doe, my sister. I'm grieved that it's true, but it's so true. A movement of young women. Bickle is a larger-than-life pastor whose attention toward young people and use of prophecies were exciting, Doe's brother said. In 1982, Bickle claimed God told him, I will change the understanding and expression of Christianity in one generation. In 1983, pastor and prophet Bob Jones came to Bickle with a word from God. Bickle would lead young adults in a prayer and worship movement that would have strong ties to Asia, Bickle explained in this September sermon, and you can link to it. A few weeks after Jones' prophecy, God gave Bickle a word for 24/7 prayer in the spirit of the tabernacle of David. Bickle claimed he went to heaven in a vision, and in another vision met with the archangel Michael, which is documented in Bickle's sermon notes from this past October. Bickle built up a following while pastoring Metro Christian Fellowship, a church he founded in Kansas City in the 80s, said former MFC pastor Michael Sullivan. Then in 1999, with these prophecies in mind, Bickle founded IHOPKC, which has held continuous prayer meetings for the past 24 years, drawing devotees from around the world. But the young people Bickle gathered during his time at MCF in the early years of IHOPKC were mostly women, said Parks, who worked at MCF, and a former MCF intern who requested to be anonymous. This other former intern, whose identity Parks confirmed, told TRR that Bickle groomed her but never crossed the line into abuse. Parks, the former intern, and Doe said they were all a part of Bickle's group of female disciples who were in their late teens and early 20s. He was a father figure to many, Park said. He was generous too, she said, buying some of them clothes and giving them gift cards. He regularly organized pizza and movie nights, usually religious movies or World War II movies, at one of the women's homes without his wife or kids present, Park said.
That is so weird.
So think of it like this.
That's so weird.
Think of it like this.
That is your age. He is your age. If you are having pizza parties and movie nights with a bunch of 19-year-olds, no way.
Does that make any sense?
No way. Not happening. It's like crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know why no one said anything at the time, because looking back at all this, it's clearly inappropriate, Park said. Bickle would also prophesy over the women, Park said. He was like, you guys are the core and the foundation of IHOP. People will come and go, but you are the pillars in the house of the Lord, Park said. He would do that a lot, hook people in with this prophetic vision and calling. One time, the other former intern said Bickle met her and Doe in a restaurant and other young adults saw them. Right after that, Bickle said they shouldn't meet in public anymore, and he invited a few young women to begin meeting secretly. We had plenty of conversations with him about what celibacy meant and the special calling of setting ourselves aside, the former intern said. We weren't supposed to tell anybody that we were invited to this mystic group to study, because then people would be jealous. Like, red flags everywhere. So weird.
And just FYI, so this woman right here is saying, I was there and I was an intern and I was groomed, but he never crossed a line sexually with me. So if they're just out there making up this story, why throw in some random woman? Yeah, I was groomed, but I wasn't sexually involved. Like, this is just a woman that's corroborating the story and saying, yeah, I was never sexually involved with Bickle, but I was there and saw all this happening.
Yeah.
This is what's happening. This is what she's saying right here. Special attention. You can keep reading if you want. I just know you got a little.
Go for a minute and I'll go.
Got a little. Doe's family revered Bickle, Doe said. In 1995, Doe's brother said he was the first one in their family to return to Kansas City as a young adult to be near Bickle and MCF. He rarely saw Bickle until a year later. Excuse me. When Doe also moved there. Then everything changed. That's when all of a sudden Mike showed special favor, he said. Bickle would invite Doe, age 19, and her brother on outings. So this kid was around. Her brother was around all the time. Then when his sister showed up, all of a sudden Bickle was like, hey, y'all be my friend. So 42-year-old Bickle and 19-year-old Doe and her brother, he would go to the park to play football with them, to restaurants, Barnes & Noble for caramel lattes, Doe's brother said. The way that it was presented was that there was a call on our lives, that we had basically a special friendship, Doe's brother said. I was extremely excited to obviously receive that attention. Doe's brother also noticed that Bickle called his sister at the church which would be Doe,
At the church from a trip.
From a trip overseas and talked to her for an hour. So he was on a trip overseas.
I'm wondering if that's the trip from the beginning, from whenever he was there and called her and told her about the dream. I think
he remembered it.
Yeah.
Bickle also expressed a special connection to Doe because on the day she was born, he'd received one of his prophecies, Doe's brother said. Park said she heard Bickle prophesy over Doe. My goodness. Park said she heard Bickle prophesy over Jane Doe at a prayer meeting. Quote, specifically for Jane, there was always language around Esther and the Shulamite. I gotta say this. The Shulamite is in Song of Solomon, which we'll spend a session or a whatever you call these things, a podcast. That's what this is. Yeah. An episode talking about bridal mysticism.
Yeah.
Now, I grew up around IHOP. I say grew up, I just mean in my early 20s, around IHOP and all of their theology, eschatology, and the ideas of bridal mysticism from Song of Solomon, Desert Fathers, all that stuff, which you can't throw all of it out, but I will say it has been utilized, and I wasn't even aware of this, but it has been utilized in church history at times by abusers to groom people into sexual relationships and sexual abuse.
Yeah.
By like pastors and leaders. Like mind-blowing. So I'm like, I didn't know that. Now, if you read Song of Solomon, you go, why would anybody be singing that or reading that in a Bible study? Like, that's something like you might want to read with your spouse. But like, anyway, it's so interesting to kind of see the background from that, from just a couple of articles that we've been sent, and going, oh my gosh. And then to go, these ladies were in a private, so imagine this. I'm a 41, 42-year-old pastor, and I say to my wife, hey babe, I'm doing some mentorship with some of our interns and college students, and I invite over a group of 5 or 6 women to be
that are like 19
to a 19, like, and apparently I'm not meeting at our house, but because that's not what
one of their apartments that you're paying for.
One of the girls' apartments that our ministry is paying for, and we're studying Bridal Mysticism, the Song of Solomon, which is about sexual things, and relating it to being the bride of Christ and Christ in the church, which the theology of it can be fine, but the context in which this is studied is mind-blowing.
Creepy.
It's super creepy. And so he says, this is the brother, specifically for Jane Doe, my sister, there was always language that Bickle would use around Esther and the Shulamite. The Shulamite was the one that Christ was, that Solomon was pursuing in the book, The Song of Solomon, and ends up having sex with. Basically, is like kind of the idea. So anyway, Parks said that Doe told her something she never forgot. She said to me at one point, there's a married man. So this is her telling her brother. I'm just thinking
No. Parks is the
Parks. Oh, okay,
Aaron
thank you.
Parks,
Parks said Doe. Gotcha. Parks. I might say Jane instead of Doe because it's hard for me to like
say Doe
without saying Joe. She said to me at one point, "There's a married man who said I'm going to be his wife." Unquote. Another alleged abuse victim of Bickle's, whose identity was confirmed by Alan Hood, told TRR she said Doe said something similar to her, that Doe believed she was prophesied to marry a much older man. Is this a different Doe? No?
Another alleged abuse victim of Bickle's identity was confirmed. She heard Doe say something. Oh. No, she also heard that
she was an abuse victim.
So Doe was saying this back when it happened. So it's not like, oh, she just, like, this is just now made up right now this month. Okay. It's like she told 2 people, maybe more back then. She, of course, didn't say Mike Bickle's name, but she told them, she was like, it's been prophesied over me that I'm going to marry a married man.
Okay, perfect. So she told Parks.
Or a much older man.
There's a married man who said, I'm going to be his wife. So she told Parks that. Then another abuse victim who's
says, she
anonymous
told me that too.
Says, well, she actually told me, I have been prophesied to marry a much older man. So because of the amount of physical affection Bickle showed to Jane Doe, the woman said she assumed Doe meant it was Bickle. But in both cases, Doe reportedly didn't say who it was. If it was only the secret, it wasn't the only secret she would keep, Doe told TRR. Doe said in early 97, Bickle told her that God had told him she was supposed to leave the internship. She was doing the MCF.
She was doing the MCF.
Thank you.
To do research exclusively for him. As part of the internship, she said she was living with the host family. But with the job change, Bickle rented an apartment for only her, which Parks also confirmed. So this happened. She had her own apartment paid for by him. He actually started telling me about the sin that the leaders were in and that it wasn't a safe place for me, Doe said. He would pay me to do research where I would go to all the libraries in the city and search out everything on the return of Jesus. The anonymous former intern said she knew that Bickle was paying Doe to do research and asked Bickle if she could also do that job. Not only did he tell me, I'm just doing that to invest in her, he was also like, no one's supposed to know about that. So this was like a big secret.
Wow. So she was living at a house, a host family.
And he moved her out there and said, those letters are bad.
They're in sin.
Come live in this apartment by yourself.
Whew.
So then this other intern saw it.
I just know how these guys think. When I say these guys, I mean like the Strang Report. The guys out there that are like, I mean, the guys on Twitter, like, what are these guys going to be saying about this? Someone sat around and basically watched a romance novel movie or a sex cult movie and wrote a huge unfounded story about this and got Alan Hood to corroborate it and Dwayne Roberts to corroborate
Aaron
it
Parks is
and
one of
Aaron
the
Parks to
founders of
corroborate
IHOPKC.
it. Like, you guys are literally fighting for a sinking ship, and the longer you do it, it's going to cause you to lose credibility to your people. Anyway, let's keep going.
Okay.
Because I'm just going to say this too. This is literally the tip of the iceberg of what's coming out. This is the tip. This is the tip of the iceberg.
Doe said Bickle gave her a key to his office, telling her to use it anytime she wanted, which both Parks and the anonymous intern confirmed. Doe said Bickle also told her that she would someday join him in a chariot in which God had invited him. I don't know if you know.
I know what the chariot is. The chariot is a Mike Bickle encounter that he had in the early 80s where he went to heaven, stood before the Lord, and a chariot came. It was a fiery chariot. And he says that God told him to get in, and he cried out, "No, I can't get in this chariot. It's not just for me to get in this chariot. I'm not worthy of this." And God said, "Get in the chariot." And he said there was 30 or 35 other young people that were in chariots, and they were like the end time apostles.
All right.
That's the chariot. And he tells Doe at 19 years old, "You also are going to be in that chariot with me." He tells another 19-year-old woman, that's not his wife. His wife of 40, 42 is sitting at home. And actually, she was a real estate agent. Diane was a successful real estate agent. Mm-hmm. And he tells Doe that she's going to be the one that's going to marry him, prophesies that his wife is going to die, that she's going to marry him, and that she's called to be in that end-time chariot with him. I'm telling you, but you're 19. Think about being 19, hearing like the teaching of this guy and being like enamored by the teaching, and then feeling like you have like a spiritual mentorship, like a spiritual father.
Totally.
And then they say a couple things that twist you. You're like, wait, Diane's gonna die and I'm gonna marry you? But like, what do you? People go, well, you run. Well, yeah, of course you should run, but you've already been pulled in.
Mm-hmm. And you trust this guy. He's your mentor. He's your pastor. He is like the godliest person you know.
This is where the idea of spiritual abuse comes into play here. Prophetic spiritual abuse by prophesying something that is like so out in left field, but there's probably been legit prophecies leading up to that, that she's watched.
Of course, yeah.
So
she knows he's like...
And then the financing. So you're financing her, and then all of a sudden he's put her in her own place, takes her out of a place, puts her in a different place. Like, this is just... All right. I felt like I was the center of his world, Jane Doe said. Bickle then started to control her schedule, inviting her to fast with him from Sunday to Wednesday. Oh my gosh. He limited who she could see, supposedly so she could follow the isolation of the early Desert Fathers. So the Desert Fathers were mystics from the I don't know, the years like 1200s, 1400s, 1500s. The early Desert Fathers, they were Catholic mystics. Many had legitimate encounters. Like, anyway, it's an interesting thing to study in and of itself. However, many of them isolated themselves completely. And so he controlled who I met with and when I met with them, Doe said. I could only have a couple friends, and when I met with them, I could only meet with them about the Bible or Jesus. It was not to be a hangout. In the fall of 97, so that's called isolation. She's getting isolated and telling not to eat. So there's all kinds of, like, fasting is fine, but when you're told not to eat and isolate from friends and told that you're going to marry this guy someday, it's like, this is a perfect storm. Plus, you're being financed at the same time. That's the other huge part of this thing, that he's literally taking the church's money and financing this girl to pull her in. In the fall of 97, she said Bickle invited his research team, 5 women and 1 man, to travel to Europe. Okay.
So his research team was 5 women, 1 man.
Bickle was
taken on a trip to Europe.
Yeah, you keep reading.
Bickle would refer to his wife, Diane, as Lady Di, and connected Princess Diana's recent death in Paris to his prophecy that his own wife would die, Doe said. Bickle also gave Doe a book and magazine on Princess Diana. It's like sick.
It's very creepy.
On the last day of the trip, they were scheduled to tour Paris, Doe said, but that morning, Doe said Bickle disappeared. The team spent the day looking, but no one could find him. When Doe finally got back to her room that night, she said Bickle called her. He reportedly didn't tell her where he'd been, but she said he invited her to eat alone with him at a restaurant. He also said he'd splurged on everyone having their own hotel rooms, she said. At the restaurant, she said he ordered a couple rounds of cocktails. At the time, Doe was 20 and Bickle was 43. After dinner, she said he took her to an alley and kissed her full on. The next thing I remember, I was waking up in my hotel room the next morning, she said. I definitely blacked out. I remember I was clothed. That's all I remember. And just being very disoriented. So back up for a second. She's 20 years old. So he's giving her drinks. She blacks out.
She's in Paris.
She's in Paris.
He planned this. He got them all their own hotel rooms. And
she doesn't remember what happened.
Yeah.
She blacked out.
Yeah.
So she said, all I remember is being very disoriented.
She gets kissed in an alleyway. She blacks out. And she wakes up in her room.
Not remembering what happened.
Sullivan, who said he was a close confidant of Bickle at the time, said he knew about these travels for Bickle, but had no idea he was taking mostly young women with him. We would have intervened if we had known that was going on, Sullivan said. When they got back home, Doe said the dynamic with Bickle progressed. He would cross the line and kept crossing it more severely sexually. She said, and he would have me pray a prayer of Psalm 51, asking the Lord to forgive us. Bickle soon told, and this is where, like, trigger warning, but when sexual abuse victims, when this happens within the church, the tough part for sexual abuse victims is because so much is connected to the Bible and Christianity and spirituality. There's like literally triggers to everything. So like imagine a victim like that years later trying to read Psalm 51. It's all tainted.
It's terrible.
So and my good friend actually that I knew when we were in Kansas City, he's has a close family member who's been through something like this. And he was just telling me, he said, you know, these situations, they cause people to completely turn away from the Lord because during these negative encounters, there's spiritual things that are being said. And so here's another one of those scenarios. Bickle soon told her the apartment was no longer a good place for her. And so he rented a different apartment for her 5 miles away, she said. He told her that someday they'd have their own house, but that it needs to be conservative in the front and could look bigger on the back, she said. The sexual interactions included everything but intercourse, Doe told TRR. I have a few memories in hotel rooms, she said. They were way more than Paris.
Way worse.
Way worse than
Paris. Which, I mean, I don't know what that means, other than in Paris she woke up disoriented, not remembering the night before, after... So it was worse than that. So I can't imagine what that would be.
This man, and when you read his emails regarding this, you're going to be like mind blown. Doe said she didn't write about Bickle in her journal entries from that time due to the secrecy Bickle required. But in an entry a month after Paris trip, she wrote, I'm in a whirlwind right now. Sometimes I think I do good to just come up for air. Meanwhile, in 1997, Bickle became urgent to bring in another senior pastor to replace him so Bickle could focus on establishing the prayer movement, said Michael Sullivan. In 1998, Doe's father bought a house for Doe, and she soon added roommates in the house. Also, 2 other young women moved to Kansas City who drew Bickle's attention, said Doe. The meetings with Bickle slowed down, said Doe. Yet in late 99 or early 2000, she said she had one more physical encounter with Bickle in a hotel room in Dallas. It's a lot of detail, folks. This is a lot of detail to be coming out. By 2000, Bickle had taken the prayer ministry out of MCF, Sullivan said, adding, quote, I think he separated from our church because he didn't enjoy the kind of scrutiny and accountability that was built into our church.
That is a huge point. That is a huge point. So he does not like the accountability that their church provided, which is why he created the ELT. Why it's the way it is. Why there's no accountability.
Protected at the top.
Yeah.
So talk about the age of the ELT. I mean, I know you don't know their specific ages, but just the idea. Let's talk about this. Stuart Greaves is
younger than him. They're all younger
50.
than him.
Alan Hood is about 50. Sliker close to 50. Like all these guys are late 40s, early 50s, and he's almost 70. Do you know what that means? these guys were all there when this person was there. Stuart, you probably know who this person is. Stuart Greaves, David Sliker. You probably know all the names that are actually being mentioned in this article. And you guys were groomed by Mike Bickle to protect Mike Bickle. And guess what you're doing very well? You're protecting Mike Bickle, but not for long, because this house of cards is going to drop. Got me going.
I know. I do think that's an important note, though, that he left this church because of the accountability.
And you guys are using Matthew 18. Instead of using it for the purpose of justice, you are using it as a shield for injustice. Matthew 18. You'll notice right now that nobody is allowed to meet with Mike Bickle. He won't meet with anybody unless it is the victim coming to confront him. But instead, the victim's husband came to confront him with Dwayne Roberts. But Mike would not allow for a Dwayne Roberts and the victim's husband to come in and meet with him. Why? Because he doesn't want to be cornered. He doesn't want to be caught. He's like a mouse running. And you guys are using a Bible verse like a Pharisee to protect an abuser while you disarm and throw someone else that's been abused by this man in harm's way. You guys are literally doing the opposite of everything your heart's desired has been to do, which is to establish justice, Stuart Greaves. I know your book. I know what you speak about because I know what you mentored me about from 2012 or from 2008 to 2012. You mentored me about Christ-centered justice. Do justice. Stop with the Matthew 18 crud and move forward and do justice. Step out of the way because these allegations and the truth that's coming out, it's coming as a steamroll for anybody that's standing in the way of justice against Mike Bickle right now and the truth of what's happened. You guys are in the way of this, and we will not be silent. Not just us, but everything, the dirt across the board, it's going to come to the top. It's time to wake up. It's time to get out of the way. It's time to do justice and make this man step forward and speak. The idea that, oh, the Lord will defend me. That's what Mike always said. The Lord will defend me. I've been told not to speak. He's hiding in cowardice behind an ELT that's running front for him. And that's not afraid, for whatever reason, to just run front for the guy.
Yeah, they're definitely enablers. Bickle, however, said in an apology email to MCF in 2005 that God had told him to separate from MCF. I had a dream that I believe was from the Lord. How convenient. All of his dreams are from the Lord. In it, he showed me that MCF did not establish IHOP, but rather IHOP was removed from MCF by the Lord because of the spiritual culture of MCF that evolved by 1999. I'm sure that's a deeper story. I don't even know what the spiritual culture of MCF was. So Sullivan views the supposed prophecy differently. In my view, Bickle has regularly used claims of urgent prophetic revelations to trump the ethics of biblical love and relationally healthy processes.
That's an interesting statement.
Yep.
That's actually
a statement.
That's a
good quote.
That's a good quote for the church at large and for the charismatic church at large. Regularly using claims of urgent prophecy to trump ethics of biblical love and relationally healthy processes. That's big.
Bickle also spiritualized his requirement on Doe to keep their interactions secret, Doe said. During that time, he would nicely threaten in a charisma way that if I would ever say anything, no one would ever believe me, she said. He talked about lying and truth and how Jesus had a different truth than we think he did. It was very sophisticated, the brainwashing weirdness. Yes. Yeah, definitely brainwashing. And yeah, I'm going to let you read for a second.
Does Bickle, Doe said, Doe is such a hard word to say. Doe said Bickle also told her to delete emails from him and never to reply back, but rather to start a new thread. There's another story out there that will come about where someone was told to delete emails as well, but we can't get into that. When Doe started dating the man who became her husband, Bickle became angry at Doe for dating him. The other anonymous victim told TRR. One night we had a meeting and Doe and her date came a little late, and Doe walked up to Mike and was standing there. And Mike berated her, got very angry with her, and said she was ruining her life in God, and what was she even doing with this guy, the woman said. Though Bickle officiated at the wedding of Doe's brother, Doe said Bickle told her he can't officiate hers. Instead, he walked up to the front during her wedding ceremony sobbing.
What?
That's what Doe's brother said he saw happen.
During the wedding ceremony, walks up to the front sobbing. That is
I'm sure you could spiritualize whatever that
weird.
Because of that community, I'm sure that could have been spiritualized as something. For years throughout her marriage, Bickle said Doe coded emails and texts to her. The emails and texts exist, folks.
Yeah, and we've got some of them.
They're in this article.
In this article, you can read them. They're there. So whoever's saying there's no evidence, there's no text, there's no emails, there are. And ELT knew this too.
ELT's known this stuff. But they said, just wait, be patient. I'm sure they're probably planning a smear or attack campaign against her, which Mike actually alludes to in his email to Jane Doe's husband. It's mind-blowing. Praying for you for the real 195 to the end. He texted on November 1st, 2018. He used 195. When he used 195, he meant I love you.
So he texted her that in 2018.
We both, quote, we both have a chariot to get into in this life, and we both being challenged physically. He emailed to her on October 3rd. Do you know what that means? The chariot is the chariot.
No, I mean, we're both being challenged physically.
I don't know. I have no idea. On October 3rd of this year. October 3rd. Doe said she mostly tried not to think about Bickle. For these 20 years plus, I would drive by the exit where my apartment was, my 2 apartments, and in my mind, I would wonder if I'm ever going to talk about that. But that was as far as I would go. I would feel sick to my stomach. I've never gone to any place I've ever been with Mike since then. Like there was no curiosity. There was no nothing. It's like I ran. In March 2023, Doe said she listened to a podcast about Bill Cosby's alleged abuse and saw herself in that situation. I fell to the floor and began to wail, she said. That was the moment of trauma. That was the moment of trauma unearthed.
Rewind real quick.
Mm-hmm.
She listened to a podcast about Bill Cosby's alleged abuse and saw herself in that situation. So, like, just think about that for a minute. What happened with Bill Cosby, hotels, drinks, what that means.
Waking up.
Not remembering anything.
Realizing
what that could
something.
mean. Yeah, I'm just going to put that out there.
Jeez, this is painful. In May, Doe finally talked about it for the first time. In May. First telling her husband also confirmed with TRR 4 days later a friend of hers and asked her a question out of that.
4 days later, a friend of hers asked her a question out of blue. Did Mike ever do anything physical with you?
I literally started to cry and shake, and I just shared with her my story. That's when she said, there's a current woman, meaning there's a current woman in Mike's life. We know. And that's when Doe said she knew she had to do something. Neither Doe nor her husband had confidence in IHOPKC's leadership or accountability structure. So in late June, Doe told Alan Hood her story, which Hood confirmed with TRR. Hood called it devastating news. So in June, she brought this to Alan. Which is interesting, because Alan, we just did our last episode. I do think you guys should go back and listen to the last episode about how they handle sexual allegations within IHOPKC, because there's a legal document, the Grace Report, that's out about how they were supposed to have handled that abuser's case, and they didn't. So Alan saw that and said, I'm out of here. He left because of that. John O'Hall left because of that. So all these guys are leaving because of the negative way things are handled. So then they get this to come to them 5 years later.
Yeah, it's interesting that they said that they didn't have confidence in IHOPKC's leadership or accountability structure. Like, they knew.
Yeah.
They knew that they wouldn't handle this correctly, so they went to Alan instead. Which
means they didn't trust that David Sliker and Lenny LaGuardia and Stuart Greaves would actually allow for this to come to Mike and actually bring accountability. They have no confidence. Guess what? Neither does the whole charismatic Christian world right now, except for the old guard like Rick Joyner, Stephen Strang, and everybody that's buddy-buddy with Mike. I want to remind you guys, Steve Strang said in his initial video about trying to out the non-victims and all this stuff and try to stand for Mike, he said, I've emailed Mike about this and he hasn't responded. Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Guess what? Mike is using his email, and it's in this. He's emailing some other people some direct threats. Doe is so credible. Her fruitfulness. Oh my gosh. Hooked on phonics. Doe is so credible. Her the fruitfulness of her life and faithfulness that I've seen her walk in for over 20 years, Allen Hood said. That to me, it couldn't be denied. And yet, to be honest, I don't want to believe it. That's where we're all at. We just wept, and I said, I'm with you, Doe. I'm here, and I'll stand with you, and we'll walk this out together.
I know, that's going to make me cry.
Thanks, Alan. And I know there's a lot of people that actually are mad at Alan right now. Not even just, I'll just say this about people that have been victims of IHOP on a spiritual abuse side, or even just people that had negative interactions with people that weren't even leaders at IHOP, and I'm now burned and angry at IHOP or whatever. There's a lot of people that want to throw every single ELT member out or be like, IHOP as a whole was so bad. And just look, everybody's on their own journey of waking up from this whole system. Even if you were I'm going to say something that will probably trigger some people that are just really burned by IHOP as a structure and as a whole. But I'll say this, I would even look at Stuart Greaves and Dave Slyker right now, Lenny LaGuardia, these guys that have been with him for many, many years. They believe everything Mike says. They believe every single prophecy. They believe him to the point of dead loyalty to the end. I think that probably Alan was there for a long time. And then Alan went, wait, this Brad Tebbitt situation is not right. I have children that are here. And we're going to let this man be here? This is not right. But the guys that stayed, they're still in that fog.
Under a spell.
Yeah, or there's dirt. Or there's actually something going on with Dave Slyker behind the scenes that he doesn't want to be known. Or there's something going on with Stuart Greaves that he doesn't want to be known. Or Lenny LaGuardia. Or they're just under the spell of let's just hold on to this thing and fight for this thing because God's end time promise is really, it's the linchpin is based on IHOP's, on Mike Bickle and IHOP being the top or whatever. Anyway.
Okay. By August, Doe and her husband also reached out to former IHOPKC leader Dwayne Roberts, his wife Jennifer Roberts, and to Sullivan. Both Dwayne Roberts and Sullivan told TRR. We've known her to be a person of integrity and character, Roberts said. It's not in her nature to come up with something remotely close to this to gain something. Doe will always tell the truth, and Mike will always tell his own story. Roberts, who is part of IHOPKC since its earliest days, told TRR that he didn't know about Bickle's secret meetings with women in their 20s in the late 1990s. But he said Bickle didn't hold similar discipleship groups for men. Interesting. Roberts said Bickle commonly had young women who were 20 years younger than him around at IHOPKC. Both Roberts and Hood told TR that Bickle had internal deadbolts in his office.
Former ELT members remember this, that he had internal deadbolts at his office. Sullivan said Doe's story reminded him of a 2015 conversation he and his wife had with a woman who'd been close to Bickle when he pastored at MCF. In 2015, a woman comes to Sullivan and says, She told us that that was the line that he used, that Diane was going to die and that they would be together. So when Doe told us the same thing, I was like, oh my gosh, I've heard this before. Can you imagine?
So that's his line. That is not something that just... So if you've heard that before, reach out to someone. Because...
Yeah, if you're listening to this and you've heard that, or if you're in that situation now, people go, oh, nobody that's in that situation now would be listening to this.
There is a current person. That's the whole reason this is all coming out.
I don't think there's a current person. I think there's current people.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. I think there's current people. The pain of being that person, or if, here's the thing, I would say go to Boz or go to Dwayne. Go to Boz because he's legal counsel. Go to Boz or go to Dwayne or go to Alan.
Don't go to ELT.
My goodness. Go to them and be like, this story actually sounds like my story. Mike actually used that phrase with me.
Okay.
The woman to whom
So when Doe told us that, I was like, oh my gosh, I've heard that before. The woman to whom Sullivan was referring spoke with TRR. She confirmed that Bickle, when married and serving as a pastor in her church in Kansas City around 1983 or 84, had connected emotionally with her. She said she doesn't consider herself a victim of Bickle's, but she said Bickle communicated to her a prophecy that someday his wife Diane would die in an earthquake, and then Bickle and this woman could be together.
So she doesn't consider herself a victim, which is awesome because she wasn't actually sexually involved or anything. But she was on the other side of Mike Bickle grooming her.
He was definitely grooming her
to a future relationship, but it just didn't happen. But the same prophecy, how many women did he give that prophecy to until it worked on this one? All right, Robert said that phrase became key throughout the August and September when we talked with Doe and other former IHOPKC staffers who'd noticed red flags in Bickle's behavior throughout the years. That was the golden thread we pulled on, and things began to come to the surface, Robert said. That phrase has been tied to stories in 3 different decades. I'm 150% positive that Mike has said that to other women. Now, Dwayne Roberts is saying, I'm 150% positive he said it to other women. What does Dwayne Roberts have to gain from this? Except for a lot of IHOP lovers coming and bashing him.
Yeah, and
bashing him nonstop.
Being rude.
Roberts said that he met in person. I'm proud of you, Dwayne. I appreciate you. Dwayne and Jennifer Roberts, we appreciate you guys. We don't know you, but we love you and appreciate. I sat at one thing and heard you preach many times, and I appreciate you, and I love you for doing this. Roberts said he met in person with IHOPKC director Stuart Greaves on September 30th and told him some allegations had been made about Mike, but didn't go into the specifics. Roberts said he told Greaves he intended to meet with Bickle and asked Greaves to be a witness to that conversation. Watch this. Roberts said Greaves refused. Why? Because Matthew 18. Saying Roberts needed to conduct a Matthew 18 process with Mike Bickle and initially confront Bickle one-on-one. On October 2nd, Roberts met with Greaves again, telling Greaves he'd involved 2 other pastors who had strong ties to Bickle. The exchange turned heated, Roberts said.
Means.
Oh, I know what that looks like. I know what that looks like.
Greaves was mad that he involved anyone outside of IHOPKC.
Yeah, Greaves doesn't want... Greaves, Stuart... And Sliker and all you guys, you don't realize it, but you run a organization, a 501c3 of secrecy. You run a Masonic style organization. Oh, Blaise, that's too intense. No, you guys are running front for an abuser. And if you don't believe it, meaning, this is what I mean. Maybe you didn't believe this when it first happened. Maybe you're an innocent party to all of this, but you're utilizing these things to keep secrecy. Mike Bickle needs to be in a room with multiple men to have a conversation about this and either deny it or he needs to come clean. One or the two. But because he won't, and because you guys are running front, this is going worldwide, and this organization is going to struggle, if not die, because of it. On October 9th, Doe's husband, who TRR is keeping anonymous to protect Doe's identity, emailed Mike Bickle to meet that day to talk about something personal. Doe told TRR that she declined to be a part of the meetings because she doesn't think it's appropriate for victims to meet directly with their abusers.
Of course.
Imagine that.
Of course,
oh, but guess what they would say? Well, Matthew 18, hey, Jane Doe, Matthew 18 would say you need to confront this man to his face. You guys are mind-blowing.
So Roberts planned to attend the meeting too, but when Bickle found out, Bickle insisted that Doe's husband and he meet alone, the email shows, which the email is in here. You can click and read through. These emails are crazy. Does husband... now I did it.
I'm telling you.
Doe's husband told TR that Bickle denied the allegations when they met and said Doe had misunderstood his prophecy. Bickle said God wanted Doe and Bickle to work together in ministry after Diane died, not marriage. Doe's
Bickle said...
Why does your wife have to die then for her to work in ministry? That makes no sense. So
this is like recent, October. Doe's husband meets with Mike Bickle. There are email chains related to this.
Yes.
And Doe's husband says, we talked it out, and he said, no, I was saying when Diane dies.
What do you preface everything with when your wife dies?
But
That's so weird.
I'm just saying that alone is so damning to show the mental state of the man that all of charismatic Christianity has followed.
Yeah.
This is crazy, Steve Strang. Are you going to report on this? Please
Yes,
do
please
the body of
report on
Christ.
the emails.
Please do the body of Christ a favor, Stephen Strang.
I would love to see
and
Dr.
report
Michael Brown's...
Mike Brown. Surprise, surprise.
I would love to
Surprise,
see him report
surprise.
on the
Well,
emails between Mike Bickle and Jane Doe's husband.
Sorry for being a little bit sarcastic there, but that we made a meme about that statement Dr. Brown put out saying, "I don't have time any longer to be involved in the Mike Bickle
You don't
scandal."
have time anymore.
Bro, nobody got time for this, right? Your schedule now. These are allegations shake and rock the face of charismatic Christendom, and you only have time when there's not enough evidence. You only have time until you realize, holy crap, this is going down.
All right.
We got in the comments last time when I said holy crap. Not allowed to say holy
You're
crap.
not. He said Christians don't say that.
Sorry.
We'll have to censor
Our audience is in their 80s.
Which is fine. We have
Which
a
we
wide
actually
we have
appreciate.
a wide audience, which I love the
Hey, look,
80-year-old grandmas.
I'm gonna be in my 80s sometime, and I'm gonna be trying to watch some young. I don't know what the generation would be called then, and what goes around comes around. I just made fun of y'all. Y'all gonna make fun of me when I'm in my 80s. That's how it happens. We appreciate y'all. All right, let's go.
Okay. Let's see. Where are we? Oh, yeah. He said, this is so rude, too. He said, I always just assumed that Doe was so pure.
Mike
she
Bickle.
would never take any of those things romantically. That is what Mike Bickle said about her. So it's her fault. He just thought she was so pure. But clearly now she's not pure. Clearly she's just like this. It's so weird.
You deny it, then you revert it. You reverse it.
It's her fault. But he thought she was pure. She would never take it romantically.
Bickle followed up that
gross.
night with an
He is
email.
gross.
Now this one, on this section, Bickle followed up that night with an email, urging Doe not to go public with the accusations, and then accused Doe of the greatest betrayal of my life. Greatest betrayal? I realize she has not betrayed me at this point, but even the chance of her doing this creates great pain in me, but not anger at her, that a most trusted friend did this to me at the end of my life after 40 years of being in prayer meetings, many hours a day, 6 days a week. This is like, this email...
All right, so after this one, we need to do an episode. This is getting long. We need to do an episode of just reading the emails.
We'll roll into the next episode that'll read the emails. Doe's husband said, and by the way, that was a quote from the emails. Doe's husband said Bickle's foundation was a donor to their organization, but Bickle predicted that if Doe were to talk publicly about her allegations, that Bickle would need to remove financial support to avoid the appearance of a bribe. What do you call that money over 20 years? Bickle also warned that social media storm would bring up accusations against her. That same day, Doe's husband and Roberts met with Greaves and Marcy Sorgi. I believe that's Bob Sorgi's wife, another senior leader of IHOPKC. Doe's husband shared what happened between Doe and Bickle in Paris with those leaders, Roberts said. But then Greaves and Sorgi were incredibly slow to move after that.
Yeah, they were.
Clearly and continually. Incredibly slow to move after that, probably because it wasn't Matthew 18 style in their book. On October 20th, Bickle preached a message at IHOPKC on a black horse prophecy and predicted he'd be betrayed by someone close to him. So
October 20th.
These guys, Stuart, Sliker, all you guys knew about this stuff, and you let Bickle get up there and preach about the black horse? You let Bickle get up there and preach about the black horse? You let Bickle get up there and prep and groom your community that you are the current shepherd over and tell them that great accusation is coming, but it's against the prayer movement and against me, and don't believe it because it's Revelation 12. It's the rage of Satan. If anything disqualifies you to shepherd this movement, that's it. This is mind-blowing.
It's crazy. Okay, on October 23rd, Doe's husband emailed Bickle and requested another meeting, this time including former IHOPKC leader Brian Kim and Wes Martin, former pastor at IHOPKC's Forerunner Church. But Bickle reportedly refused, saying that Bickle is under Greaves' accountability, conveniently, and that Greaves had advised Bickle to meet only with Doe's husband and not with the group.
Stuart, what are you doing, bro? Like, what are you doing?
This is what he said. This is the crazy part. I am still waiting on ladies who allegedly have a story to come to me and Stuart, according to Matthew 18. He wants victims to come to him directly, according to Matthew 18. That is not what Matthew 18 is about. This is like so insane.
It's twisted. If this had happened to my wife And she comes to me, said, hey, before we were married 20 years ago, this happened with the leader in the church. And I went to those leaders like her husband did, who had a lot of guts to do this, and I'm super proud of him. And they said, yeah, your wife needs to come to Mike. I'd be like, excuse me, I cannot cuss on this because we'll lose all of our followers. I can't, and we can't do explicit on YouTube here. But that's the type of thing that makes me want to cuss. Like this is millstone neck type stuff. You know, this is not like you guys pulling Matthew 18, we love Jesus. Like, Isaac Bennett, where are you, bro? Where are you in all this, bro? What are you doing?
This is a lot of data points here.
This is a lot of data points, Sliker. This is a lot of stuff. I don't know what you knew when you knew it, but you sure as heck know now. And all of you guys slow rolling this and protecting the great man of God, like, this is a mess. This is a mess. Let's keep going.
This is another thing I'll say real quick. Somebody had commented after reading this, was like, where's the part where that was to laugh about, Dave Sliker? Where's the part that was so ridiculous you would laugh about it? None of this is funny.
And we're talking about the leaked audio from Whistleblower and Dave Sliker, that he said, the first time I heard that there was an allegation, I was told that it was so menial that you would laugh about it just to hear it.
Yeah,
and of course he didn't know the intensity of all the specifics of the allegation.
Still,
I'll
who's
give him
saying
that.
that?
But who's saying you would laugh about it? What would be to laugh about anyway in this type of scenario? Roberts said, October 24th, exec leaders, including Sliker, Greaves, Sorgi, and Lenny LaGuardia, met to hear Doe's husband share Doe's allegations. Roberts said, Brian Kim, Wes Martin, and Roberts also attended that meeting, said Roberts. I bet that was an interesting room full. Roberts said he had actually, you know what I found, what they said about this was that they were all very like solemn about it and all like, we're gonna help. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as that meeting ended, everything switched. Lawyers, like a bunch of like secrecy and slow rolling, and here we are. Like, if Mike Bickle had taken responsibility for these allegations and met with the husband as well as Dwayne Roberts and possibly Alan Hood and sat with them and denied or said, no, this is completely false allegations, that's at least one step in the right direction. But because he wouldn't do that, the IHOP has forced these people. You go, why are they blasting this in the news? Well, you know why it's out there? Because you won't take responsibility. You won't have a conversation about it, and your ELT's protecting you. So here we are. Now it's going to have to go across the news channels, and yes, it gives Christianity a bad name, just like the Ravi Zacharias situation did, just like so many others have. You are now lined up in that for your legacy, and that was not the hope. That wasn't the hope. Like, maybe... I mean, I think Sliker and Stewart even had a chance up till this article came out. But now it's like, yeah.
All right. Robert said he had written a 50-page document with a timeline and some suspicions concerning Bickle and several women. He added that the report had no names, only a couple initials, and some unnamed references. Robert said he referenced the document in that meeting but did not give it to the leaders. On October 25th, Roberts gave the 50-page document to Greaves and talked with him about a few alleged victims he identified by name. Roberts told TR he urged IHOPKC leaders to issue a bold and transparent statement about the allegations to the IHOPKC community. But on October 27th, IHOPKC announced merely that there were allegations against Bickle, but declined to comment on the nature of the allegations.
And this is when Dean Briggs, former leader at IHOP, because Dean stepped down a few weeks prior to this, knew about these allegations, and he sat in on the statement that Greaves and Bennett and Sliker gave, and that's why he stood up with such force and said, there's more to be said here. Mm-hmm. And I want to just commend Dean Briggs and his wife, Dean and his wife, for having the guts to stand in that situation. I've never seen somebody stand up to leaders like that from the floor to the stage in such a intense, huge movement. And Briggs stands up, and Briggs was Lou Engle's right-hand man back in the day, I believe. He's like, Briggs is not a small fry. The dude like literally worked with Bickle for a long time, and then he stands up and says, there's more to be said, and what you're saying is actually righteous BS. He used those words. I would be livid too if I knew this 50-page document and if you knew all this detail and you watch these guys slow roll it and just be like, we're not going to comment on the nature of the allegations. We're going to leave all of you. And you hear Sliker say something like, patience is not secrecy. It may seem like secrecy, but it's
Yeah.
not secrecy. You guys are a living, breathing organization of secrecy. That's what you are.
Every single thing that comes out is more and more proof the ELT knew and they lied from the stage about it.
If you are in IHOP and you've, goodness gracious, I'm sure if there's anybody that's in IHOP that's stayed this long in our podcast, they're probably like, they're deprogrammed by now. But like, if you're still there, you need to go up to these guys and say, why are you doing this? I mean, I can't give any names, but I've had one guy reach out to me that's been there for over a decade, and he's leaving at the end of this year, and he said, I tried to talk to Stuart about this. I've tried to talk to these people about this or these people about this. There's different people that people within have tried to talk to them, and everything's so secretive. Go ahead.
Okay. Robert said IHOPKC staff were threatening to resign. So on October 28th, Roberts, Kim, and Martin released a statement with details about the allegations against Bickle to IHOPKC staff, hoping more information would stabilize a frustrated community. Greaves has publicly said IHOPKC leaders responded within 24 hours of official notice of allegations to meet with Bickle to remove him from public ministry. A recent statement from the advocate group refuted Greaves' claims. Greaves and the executive team did not respond to the record to TRR's repeated requests for comment. Robert said he believes IHOPKC leaders are good people who are caught in a system created by Bickle.
Exactly.
So he gives them more credit than I do.
Well,
He's saying they're good people who are caught in a system created by Bickle who engages in masterminding storylines. They need outside help and must demonstrate transparency, Robert said.
Yeah, and I'll actually, because I was in that community for a long time, I know these people, not all of them, but I've felt the same way over time. When I read this article, though, it's very, very it's very deflating for those that actually would like to believe like that the ELT are good people, but you can be a good person and caught in a bad system, and then you do unfortunate things, or just
he's groomed Stuart and Sliker and Isaac also to be his.
I was at Teen Mania Ministries at 18 years old. I mentored under Ron Luce, who ran Acquire the Fires and did mission trips and stuff and spoke in stadiums to speak at 21 for a year. And if I had stayed there and mentored under him for another 20 years, then I would do the things that he does and say the things that he says and like do whatever he says probably. You're groomed underneath somebody for 20 years. And I'm not saying good, bad, or the other with Ron. I love Ron. Ron's great. But what I'm saying is, if I was groomed from 20 or 25, like these guys like Sliker and Stewart, they got there and now they're just groomed by, or mentored, whatever you want to call it, by Mike. Now you're 20 years in and your hopes are dashed to believe this. I actually want to believe that Stewart didn't know any of this for many, many years. And now he's like in October or September, he's like, oh my gosh. Or maybe the allegations, because he said they had been speaking to them ad hoc over the last 18 months. So it's not like this is all new news to these guys.
Yeah, this was not a surprise.
But like these guys, I'm just going, just don't worship this man on a pedestal anymore. Let it go, because he's clearly been in sin for many years. And it says in one of the emails, he's like, what would you like me to do? That's what he said. What would you like me to do? Mike said that to her husband. And he said, repent. And then he said, what would you like me to repent of? I repent every day. I go to bed with a clean conscience every night. I push delete and move on. But you haven't come clean to your community. So you're denying that any of this happened, even though, I mean, I don't know. I know it's brave enough for this woman to come out. I don't know. All I know is that many people vouch for her character.
Yes.
Many people on the inside vouch for her character. And so it's just going to be a he said, she said thing, because there's not just a he said, she said. Look at the numerous like reports of people that, oh yeah, I remember seeing that. Oh yeah, that makes sense. Oh, I saw this happen.
Aaron Parks, the anonymous intern, not to mention all of these men who are former ELT, standing with her. It's like,
there's too many confirmations from that time period in stories. Paris, France, with 4 women and 1 young guy. Great idea. Great idea. That's a great ministry move. That's a great ministry move. Just that alone. There's a picture in here of him in Paris with.
Oh really?
Yeah, it says Mike Bickle in Paris with, and you can't see who's in the picture with him because it's just his face. It says. Mike Bickle pictured in '97 during a trip to Paris, France. Welcome to the mess.
Okay, let me read this paragraph because this is important. Doe said speaking out to the media was her last resort. This is from Jane Doe. In spite of the fact that IHOPKC thoroughly knows my story, they have consistently minimized and denied their knowledge of real evidence from the victims. She said, I am devastated that men and women who have been my friends for 25 years have completely shunned me since they were first made aware. I had hoped we could all work together to do the right thing. How I have been treated has broken my heart. That makes me want to cry.
Yeah, this the idea. So back to Sullivan's quote earlier, he said Mike Bickle. This was back in '99, and he worked with him back then. He said Mike Bickle constantly would use urgent prophetic things to bypass like relational health, like healthy relational things and processes. So I'm looking at the same thing, like, because top down, leadership goes top down, right? So what is the ELT doing? They're using not an urgent prophetic thing, but they're using their interpretation of a biblical Matthew 18 to bypass healthy boundaries, to bypass loving your neighbor and healthy boundaries and actually what should be happening here. And I would say they're bypassing justice and truth. And they're using Matthew 18 to add more secrecy, and which is causing everyone to have to lawyer up and do all this stuff. And is that really Jesus's goal when he said Matthew 18? You think he was thinking, yeah, in the future, if I have a spiritual leader that I put my anointing on and he ends up going awry and using all the gifts that I gave him to prophesy false things and false narratives, and then to physically, sexually abuse women, whenever it comes to taking care of that situation globally, I'd like for them to be able to pull my quote from Matthew 18 to keep that person protected while creating the ability for people to make false narratives about the woman who had courage to come out. Is that what Jesus meant by Matthew 18? Is that why he put that there? Because what I'm watching is you guys do the same thing that Mike did in the 90s, which is utilize a version of your scriptural interpretation to slow roll justice and bypass healthy boundaries and ethical responses to sexual abuse within your 501c3. Thanks for listening, everybody. Leave your comments below. Share this video. Get this out there. Love y'all.
Wake up and win. Wake up and win. Wake up and win.